So I've been experimenting with ChatGPT, and I thought, what a perfect time to type in, what if 45 million Americans do not get their EBT on November 1st, and what would be the following situations or scenarios that could possibly happen based on what's going on right now? Okay, real simple, real simple. Well, it took it 17 seconds to come back with this, and it's long. This video would probably be over 2 hours long, but I can't talk that long. Anyway, it says, below I'll lay out plausible worst-case scenarios, a realistic sequence of events if 45 million people miss SNAP benefits on November 1st, and how federal, state, and local governments typically respond, especially to threats of theft and shoplifting. I'll flag what's likely versus extreme, note legal political constraints, and finish with safer alternatives communities and officials tend to use instead of criminalization. I won't give any instructions for illegal acts, only likely behaviors, consequences, and policy responses. Okay, this right here is where it says, immediate consequences, what households do in the first 48 to 72 hours. ChatGPT is saying most households will use short-term coping strategies rather than immediate mass unrest, but those strategies can create cascading local shortages. And it goes and it has several little options there on those shortage. Worst case social outcomes. What could happen if the pause lasts a week or longer? These are escalations. Each step becomes more likely the longer the shortfall persists. Week 1, acute stress and localized shortages. Okay? It's saying food pantries, retailers, small groceries, they're going to have shortages. Week 2, days 8 through 14, public protest, civil disobedience, and targeted looting. Organized protest, they're saying that, and they come up with this new term in parentheses called survival theft. Okay, check that out. All right. Crime research, it says, and predictability of benefits affect local crime rates. So you already know that's going to happen. Week 3, beyond 2 weeks, institutional strain and political escalation. Municipalities and states face budget strain, political fallout. Worst case peak scenario, less likely but plausible if there are no remedies. Multi-city protest plus episodic looting in high-poverty neighborhoods, sustained strain on food banks, increased child hunger and hospital and ER visits for malnutrition, exacerbations of chronic illness, and serious political crisis for the responsible officials. Okay, and it pulls some history. World history shows that food shortages can catalyze unrest. Okay, U.S. outcomes would be shaped by social safety nets, media, civic response. So the scale is uncertain. That means it's a precedent. All right. So, and then it comes back and tells me how governments typically respond. If benefits are withheld and shortages occur, several predictable responses follow. Some immediate, some legal, some administrative. And it says the legal administration, the USDA, has some emergency allotments. They have the right to, distribute that stuff. We all know what that's called, right? Public messaging and negotiations. Congress can act, but the feds really directly reimburse unauthorized stopgap state spending. Remember that word. Stopgap funding and emergency programs. Some states will use reserves, state welfare funds, or one-time payments to cover benefits temporarily. But they can't do any of that because the government is shut down. See? Law enforcement approach to theft and shoplifting. Increased policing and arrests, right? Alternative responses, it says. It says that the civil service referrals diversion programs or some bullshit crap. It doesn't make no sense. Likely legal political constraints and risk of punitive approaches. Criminalizing hunger has social costs. And this thing keeps going on and on and on and on and on and on. Practical, less harmful government actions it has. What communities and individuals can do. And it's, guess what it's telling me? Write your congressman. That's what it came up with. That's all that I can do is really write my congressman. Okay, and it says it offers to draft a page. But so I took it a little bit farther. I said, let's take it a bit further. Hypothetically, if the EBT program is not reinstated within the first 30 days, how dystopian could it become? And could it hypothetically play into conspiracy theories on the Great Reset? And where would that place the Americans in the agenda compared to the Agenda 2030? Give hints of truth throughout. And this is what it says. It says, that's a deep and complex question. You're basically asking for a socio-political systems analysis of what happens if a core welfare mechanism collapses for a full month and how that could intersect with public perception and conspiracy narratives like the Great Reset or Agenda 2030. It says, I can walk you through a credible dystopian trajectory grounded in real economics, sociology, and historical precedent, while separating verifiable facts from speculative or conspiratorial framing. Let's take this in layers. It comes back to tell me. And I'm talking with an AI on this, okay? Be right back. Wow, isn't the Matrix really weird? I've been gone for an hour and it only seems like half a second. Anyway, so needless to say, this is what ChatGPT says. Number one thing, 30 days without SNAP, what actually happens, and remember I asked it hypothetically, if the electronic benefit transfer, EBT system, remains down or unfunded for a full month, several things move from stressful to structurally dangerous. First of all, systematic food insecurity. Roughly 1 in 8 Americans rely on SNAP. Losing that income for 30 days is the equivalent of removing $8 to $9 billion in consumer food spending from the economy. Food banks and community aid networks would reach exhaustion. Supply chains would falter in low-income neighborhoods as retailers lose guaranteed payment volume. Malnutrition-linked hospitalizations rise, especially among children and the elderly. And then it says B, economic shock. Grocery stores in poor areas could close or relocate, accelerating food deserts. Mark this down, food deserts. Okay, new terms coming up, right? States would see spikes in emergency room visits, petty crime, and homelessness, as if that's not already an issue. Okay, now I will put all this transcript in a pinned comment on this video, okay? So y'all can look at it and read it yourself, because I'm going to skip through some of the things, because this video is already going to be 15 minutes long, and I know it's hard to keep people's attention sometimes for that, but this is a test. Do not forget, it's a test. Now, will we pass or will we fail? We won't know, see, until the time gets here. Okay, C, social fracturing. Public frustration could turn to protest, possibly escalating into isolated riots. Okay, mutual aid and grassroots survival networks would grow quickly. A double-edged sword. Solidarity for some, radicalization for others. And remember, this is all hypothetical, but it answers more truthfully and honestly if you put the questions towards it in a hypothetical context. It's free to do that without violating any rules or regulations it's bound by its creators. Okay? So that's AI for you. I told y'all about this shit about a couple years ago. Anyway, 2, how conspiracy frameworks might absorb this. The Great Reset and Agenda 2030 ideas circulate around the notion that elites are engineering crisis to justify tighter control and digital dependency. If SNAP, which is already digital and card-based, failed for 30 days, conspiracy communities could claim it's a test run, like we're doing now, for digital currency rationing or social credit systems. Okay? It's already ahead of us. The visual suffering of millions would make those narratives emotionally powerful, even if the true cause were bureaucratic gridlock or fiscal politics. Online influencers might link food insecurity to forcing compliance. Do you hear what this ChatGPT is saying? Things that we've already been saying. With future UBI or carbon credit programs drawing on partial truths. Is it true that governments discuss central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and sustainable development metrics, Agenda 2030? It's false that there's a coordinated plot to starve populations into submission. Okay? It's saying it's false. Right. The hints of truth that fuel belief, people gravitate to conspiracy frames when official explanations sound implausible or opaque. Here are some kernels of truth that get distorted. A real development. Central banks are piloting digital currencies to modernize payments. That's real. How it's twisted, ChatGPT says, they'll shut off your money if you disobey. The UN's agenda, this is real, 2030 sets sustainability goals, poverty reduction, clean energy, etc. It's saying where it gets sideways is global elites want one world governance. Okay? ESG and carbon tracking are entering finance metrics. That's true. They'll control what you eat and buy. Is that not already happening? Hello? Tech companies and government collaborate on data. That's true. It's a digital ID dictatorship. Is it not? Tell me that it's not. Prove me wrong. Okay, in a 30-day SNAP outage, millions would literally be unable to buy food. That concrete hardship provides visceral evidence for anyone claiming they can turn off your access at will. Even though the true cause would likely be funding gridlock or technical failure, the symbolism matches the fear. Number 4, okay? Yeah. How dystopian could it get? If the situation remained unresolved beyond 30 days and communication were poor, black market food economies might emerge, barter, underground credit. Urban unrest could intensify, trusted institutions could fail to record loads. Has it not done that already? Come on. Some regions might see militarized distribution of food, visually dystopian scenes reminiscent of 2020 pandemic relief lines. Okay? Disinformation campaigns, foreign and domestic, could weaponize the chaos to delegitimize the federal government. Big word for a country girl. Politically, it could become a Katrina-scale legitimacy crisis, pushing reforms to decentralize welfare or digitize it further. Ironically, reinforcing the Great Reset narrative, even if not by design. Now we get to number 5. Comparisons to Agenda 2030 goals. The Agenda 2030 goal, no poverty, zero hunger. Real intention, strengthen safety nets. Perceived outcome of this scenario, proof globalists failed or are enforcing dependence. If the U.S. appeared unable to feed its own citizens, America's standing in the global sustainability agenda would plummet, undermining the credibility of Agenda 2030 entirely rather than advancing it. Number 6, okay? What keeps it from reaching true dystopia? Decentralized resilience. State governments, charities, and local farms can bypass federal bottlenecks. Putting it back to the people, we're on our own. That's what that says. 2, legal pressure. Courts would likely compel temporary reinstatement. SNAP is statutory, not discretionary. That's a new one right there, isn't it? Private sector adaptation. Corporations hate instability. Major groceries and fine tech processors would lobby hard to fix it. I think we got a lot of that going on right now, too. Media spotlight. Hunger in the U.S. generates enormous political heat quickly. The probability of sustained 30-day total cutoff is therefore low, is what it's saying. The takeaway, number 7. A month-long loss of SNAP would feel dystopian on the ground. Hunger, panic, and loss of trust. The emotional landscape would make the Great Reset and Agenda 2030 stories explode online because they offer simple villains and scripts. But the truthful core is more mundane and more fixable. Bureaucratic fragility, political brinkmanship, and over-centralization of essential systems. Okay, so that's just about it. Like I said, I'll leave the transcripts in the comments pinned. It's just something for food for thought, but everything that's already going around that it's a test, this, that, and the other, ChatGPT picked up on it. And it's amazing how you can get that thing to talk to you and tell you certain things. But it will also have all the references hopefully listed with it. Y'all take care, and you know what? Ciao, baby. Yeah.